You're looking at a photo of my buddy Cierra Pope. Cierra is truly one in a million, a rare combination of a pure and open heart and a intellect and tenacity to match. She's one of those people that you just hope she gets everything she sets her heart on because she deserves it. And it had been at least a year since I last saw Cierra due to the COVID madness. And it's going to be one of those memories that makes my heart smile for a long time, getting to talk with her and going out to dinner. And this is favorite.
Talking in the car, like.
And you don't have to say anything that you would feel uncomfortable sharing. It's whatever you're comfortable with, but
Yeah, you can just.
I think I am going to grab
You can just cut the parts out where I'm like,
the ums. Well, you know, when I first started doing this, the first person I interviewed was Chris Lambert.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the most awkward I've ever been in my whole life, and it was recorded. So I edited out pretty much everything that was weird and just left like this 20-minute episode.
I know, it was super short.
Because that's
Then the others were like an hour and a
was.
half. I was like,
Well, because I literally constantly, every time he spoke, I'd go, and this, I'd interrupt him. I don't know why. It just made me so uncomfortable. So then right away I was like, okay, I could do better than I just did. All right, we're rolling. I did actually have one question I really did want to ask you. But-
okay.
So, everywhere I go with you, everywhere I've ever been with you, I guess we should start with, who are you and how do I know you? How do we know each other?
From certain sparks. That's the simple answer.
It's perfect.
But I guess it's more so just, I don't know, I have this innate ability to kind of just pick people out. And yeah, I was in the shop a lot and I had lessons with Jacob and whatever, but we've had more time together in general. And so, you know, going to concerts or just right now hanging out and talking, more real conversation, and I appreciate that because I like that a lot more than just like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, superficial. So that's actually what leads to my first question, which was, everywhere we go, you are the most beloved person I've ever met. Where everywhere we go, not only do you know everyone, but everyone has this really close connection with you. And for someone like myself who wants love, I want to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, how does this girl get so much love? Now, I know why, because you're open and you're sweet and kind. But what's the secret? What could I do?
Honesty, I would say, is the first thing. And it's cliche, but giving what you want in return. So if you just treat people in a loving way, you're more likely to receive the same thing back. Because, you know, I could see somebody that I know in public and give them the cold shoulder, like, I don't know you. But even the little things like walking in an aisle in Walmart and I see somebody that I haven't seen in 5 years, I go up and strike a conversation just because I'm like, hey, I know you.
So does talking with people come easily to you, or is it something you had to work on?
It's always come easily to me ever since I was little. And there are more and more instances where I feel comfortable talking to people. Sometimes I do get a little shy, which people don't think when they
What's your
when they know
zodiac
me.
sign?
Sagittarius.
And what are Sagittarius known for, if
I have
anything?
absolutely no idea.
Okay.
I don't know.
I know some people who are really into that stuff, so that it does.
Some stuff it really
is
does.
very
Yeah.
interesting. But the reason I ask is because I'm a Gemini, which means that sometimes I'm able to make perfect sense, and sometimes I can't speak at all. And so, I think the reason I avoided sometimes social interaction is because there was a 50-50 chance that it was either going to go really well, or it was going to just be like a complete disaster.
Yeah.
And you said to just be open and, you know, get what you want to receive. And for a long time I found that hard. But more recently, in the last 5 years, I've figured out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I had to undo a bunch of bad habits. But it always was impressive to me when someone could just do it so easily.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like you, like, what's the secret? How are you like that? And I honestly don't have a good answer because it's just who I am. And I wish that I could give you all the tips and tricks, but I think you have to, there are very few things that I won't share with a stranger. Like, if somebody random walked up to me on the street and asked me a question, more often than not, I would give them the honest answer, even if I'd never seen them before. Because, like, what are they going to do with the information?
That's exactly what I'm thinking, is like, we spend so much time trying to keep people out of this like castle, and then like to protect what's in the castle, and then at the end of the day there's nothing in there because you didn't let anybody in.
Exactly.
And you have no experiences and that's a lot of people. Or like, what if someone gets in and takes something and or hurts me? It's like,
well, they needed it more than you did.
That's
apparently
just the way the game is played. And I think for me, maybe early on I had some painful experiences in my life, and so then that made me I'm like, oh, it's not worth the risk. And then as I got older, I was like, it's not worth the risk to continue not connecting with people because it's actually more painful.
Yeah.
It's more difficult.
And I think too, like, there are so many people that are guarded like that it makes you stand out just by being somebody that's not like that. So there are instances where, you know, you see somebody and you don't even have to know them, and you could just say hi and smile. Like, what harm is that gonna do? None. But who knows, that person could become your best friend. Like,
totally.
you don't know what other people need all the time. There are some people, like, I'm really good at perceiving what people want out of a situation. Like, if you're having a conversation with somebody, sometimes maybe you don't want to have that conversation, but they need it, so you still give it to them. And I think that has helped me create a lot of meaningful relationships. I don't really do like half-assed relationships. Yeah. It's all or nothing.
Literally, I could go into the store with you, you'll see 5 people you know. And none of them are like, hey, what's up? It's always like full-on hugs.
You have to stop and have a full-on conversation.
Which
yeah.
I love seeing it. I think it's
My
great.
friends are always saying, like, oh, we're going to go to this place. Sierra's going to see 5 people she knows, and we're going to have to sit there and wait for her. And we're just going to have to, like, stand off on the side because she's going to have a conversation.
But I remember, like, even the people that I knew, I didn't know they knew you. And I would think that there would have been some time where our paths would have crossed because I'm so close with this other person. And then I'd see them and they'd know you. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I know a lot of people because I try to know a lot of people. And I don't mean just like, oh, I know that person because, you know, we were at this function together. I know that person and I can tell you, like, all these intimate details about them because I get to know people.
Now, 2 things. One, how do you handle all that energy? You know, is it ever a burden? Or because of your view, do you always think like, oh, it is what it is. It's just great. And has there ever been any negative effects from that lifestyle?
I think that there have definitely been times where
because there's some creeps out there.
Not necessarily like in a creepy way, but there have been times where I've been in a relationship, whether it be like, you know, like my friend per se, and they are taking a lot, right? And I'm giving it to them, but I'm not really getting anything in return. And sometimes it's a lot depending on what I'm going through in that time of my life, right? Like you're filling up somebody's cup and you only have so much in your cup, right? And so sometimes I've never dropped a person because of that though. I've gone somewhere else to fill my cup so that I can take it back to them.
I love that.
So I've lost in my 22 years of life, besides like, you know, organic drifts where you just stop seeing a person, you stop talking to a person, stop, you know, naturally drift apart. I think I've lost a friend, where there was a significant, like, an event happened, we're parting our ways, we're no longer talking, we had a falling out. otherwise, there, for the most part, are many of my friends that I've gone kindergarten through 12th grade, and now we're in college, and we don't see each other all the time. We have our lives, we're doing different things, but whenever I see them, it's like we just pick up where we left off.
Those are the best. And that's hard for some people. I think I have this view that, like, your personality, the way you look, and all of the things that kind of make up someone, they affect our lives in ways that are outside of our control.
Absolutely.
Some people want to be friendly with people, but, like, just whatever about them is
not friendly.
There's been times that I felt that way, like I was just like, am I doing something wrong? And then I realized I'm scowling all the time because I'm thinking, and I don't look approachable.
Yeah.
And then I started to think about the way we present ourselves, and that if you want to invite those opportunities, you sort of have to, present as someone who's open to that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you're performing and say, like, you have the whole band with you and you mess up terribly. All the people around you are not going to know that you've messed up if you mess up with confidence and just keep going. And it's kind of like the same thing in a relationship. Like, if you mess up with confidence and you just keep going, you're going to go a lot further than if you're like, I've messed up terribly. This is a whole ordeal. We have to stop what we're doing. We have to fix everything right now. It falls apart, right? Your foundation just goes poof. So as long as you have confidence, I think you look more approachable, and people are more likely to share with you when you share with them.
That was one thing that I had a hard time with. I always wanted to get information from people, but I didn't like to talk about myself because it was too delicate for me. And sometimes if someone would ask me a question like, oh, what do you like to do on the weekends? It would be hard for me to say, I sit under my blanket because I've been having a lot of mental trouble.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, not much, It's like, because it would be too real to tell them the truth. And then I finally got to a point where I was like, the truth is, what the fuck? It's all about the truth anyway.
Yeah.
What's the shame? As one of my friends was saying, he's like, when people ask me now, how am I doing? Sometimes I have to say, it's been a really bad year or a month or,
Like, I'm just having a shitty day today.
Uh-huh.
I was actually talking about that this morning with some people from church. We were sitting there waiting to go out and play. And she asked me how I was doing. And I was like, you want to know how I'm doing, or do you want to know how you're doing? And she was like, no, I really want to know, like, what's going on in your life. And it's those people that you're going to have a more meaningful relationship with, because they're more willing to get real. Because for me, at least, maybe there's some people that just want to get your information. They want to know what's going on in your life and be nosy. But for me, I'm not going to ask anything that I'm not willing to answer myself. So if I ask somebody how they're doing and I want the real answer, I'm going to give them the real answer too. So I don't know. That's the easiest way to be open and honest with somebody.
One of the Gemini characteristics, not that I'm super into this zodiac stuff, but I'm old enough to realize that a lot of it is just so true. You might as well pay attention to it. But is that I can be super present and then totally disconnected. And so that sometimes it's hard because the person will come back to me like, for the person that's super connected, like, I want that again. And I'm like, person's not here today.
You're like flipping the open side.
Totally. But it's been funny because at least now I know that I do that. And now I can be like, okay, well, which person am I today? I have to just accept my limitations and whatever. I'm not an unlimited resource. That's one of my favorite quotes. Just want to make sure this is recording.
It'd be a shame if we lost all of that. It's kind of like taking offense to something. Like, when you're offended by something, you're choosing to be offended by something. That's all a choice. And we have the ability to choose to be offended and say, I'm really offended right now, you offended me, apologize. Or we have the ability to say, I'm offended, but I care more about my relationship with this person than to let this small little thing that maybe was a little offensive get to me. And And I think more and more people nowadays are taking offense to things that it's like, why does that even matter? Why are you letting that take such precedence in your relationship with this person or that person? When did that situation or that random materialistic thing take more importance than the person?
I think it's because good relationships are sort of intangible. Like you could say we had a good experience. Remember we did this. Remember we did that. But it's hard to define what is really happening in a positive interaction.
Yeah.
But in a problem, it's very specific. And you can say, that day you said this and you should not have said that to me. So I could see why it's easy. It's almost easier to understand problems.
It's like when, things are going bad in your life, you're more inclined to talk about the bad thing, right? Like when somebody asks you how you're doing, the first thing that comes to mind is like, oh, this thing happened to me and I'm really upset about it. You don't think about the good thing that happened that day too.
Yes. One time I realized that I lived across the street I lived in this apartment and there was a building across the street and I didn't know what it was. It was like a fence and it was just this brown building. And I lived there for years. And then one day the gate was open and I was like, I wonder what's in there. So I went in and it was a model train museum. Now, it wasn't a huge, epic national museum. It was just a little display of this museum, the Lompoc Model Train Society. It had been across the street from me the whole time. I didn't know it was there. Then I was walking to my old studio, which was across the street from where I lived, across a big street. And while crossing the street, I realized there were train tracks there. Now, in all the times I'd been to the shop, I'd never thought about a train. I had crossed the train tracks every day, twice a day, but I never thought about trains. It just wasn't on my... And I was like, that was the moment I was like, there are probably so many things in our lives that we're not noticing. And then we tell ourselves this story, a narrative, this happened to me, and it keeps happening to me, and, life is bad. But it's really just like one thing you chose to focus on.
Exactly.
When you chose not to say, oh my God, I'm surrounded by trains. It's amazing. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Like we're more inclined to focus on the things that we think have a bigger impact. And then once we focus on those things, it's like, oh, a bad thing happened. Another bad thing happened. The only thing that happens to me are bad things.
It's really easy to quantify. It's totally easy to see. But but blessings are harder to define. Because to me, the true beauty of the world is sort of, I think the word is ineffable. It's like beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, if you were, or maybe you just need to learn to see those things. I don't know. I'm learning about this stuff. That's why I'm talking to you about it. Because only more recently have I been like, oh my God, life is actually more beautiful than it is ugly. I mean, it's ugly. And we were talking, we just drove and we were talking about ugly things and people's bad habits and bad instincts and whatever. But you almost have to force yourself to see the beauty because there's so much of it. We take it for granted.
Otherwise, you're going to get bogged down in all the bad things, It's all relative.
Now, this is what I'm really interested in. Okay, good or bad experiences, positive or negative view of life. For what? What difference does it make? Is it that it's better to be kind and we think we know that so we can prove it, so we should do it? Or is it because guilt feels bad, so we shouldn't do things that make us feel like we've done something wrong? What are the motivations for living a just life?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier, like giving the same thing you want to receive. Like, if you're acting out and being horrible to people are not going to be so inclined to be nice to you, right?
But this is interesting. Bad behavior is rewarded all the time. And people can see that. And I think that's why people stop trying to be good, because they look around and go, everyone else is just robbing, plundering, and why shouldn't I?
I guess I've never thought of it that way. Like, I think in some cases, in a lot of cases actually, I'm not sheltered, but I kind of have this like bubble of like, these are the things I think, and I want everybody to be thinking this way too. And I know that everybody has different viewpoints on things, but I've actually never thought of it that way. Like,
which is good.
Why do good things if other people are doing bad things? Bad things are always going to happen. It's like making things illegal. Like making drugs illegal, people are still going to do drugs. As simple as that. Like, that's just how it is. But I guess it's kind of the same thing. Like, you can say, we're only going to do good things from here on out. People are still going to do bad, no matter what. So what's keeping some people in this lane and some people in this lane? For me, it feels good when I am kind. And just as much as the other person feels good, like if I'm nice to you, you're going to be like, wow, she was nice to me today. That made me happy. And I'm going to say, wow, I made Randall happy today. So we both get something out of it. So when it's mutually beneficial.
Yes, I'm with you. I agree with you. Because I go off of the way life feels. That's my primary motivator. Mm-hmm. I want life to feel a certain way. But I'm aware that other people are like, what do you mean life feel a certain way? There's either money made from a transaction or there's not. There's many ways to quantify the value of life.
Well, that's
and I've just found that living
about.
I know maybe it's so new to me. I don't know what it's like to really live an open life. I've been so closed off. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that I think that we don't realize sometimes why we're doing the things we do in the way we do them, the order that we do them. Like, we are so impressionable. So, there's this set of rules that we follow because our parents told us that's the way you act. Or, the government tells us these are the things we do. Or you have a job somewhere and they're telling you what to do. So you have all of these things coming in and you have to pick and choose which one of those things actually is going to get you to where you want to go. But I don't know that I have a complete understanding of how we get from point A to point B. Like, I guess each individual person has their own reason. Like your reason from the beginning of life to the end of your life is different than my reason from the beginning of my life to the end of my life. And so many people think, this is the way I live, so this is the way everybody else has to live.
Totally. I literally thought that everybody was the same until I was like, I don't know, 18 or 20 or something. And then I was like, you mean that the things that I want and can prove that are important are not important to you? I just couldn't believe that.
Yeah, there are so many things that...
Because it seems so obvious to me.
I feel the same way sometimes. Like, I'm aware, but at the same time, I'm like, obviously this thing is important. Why wouldn't you think that's important? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? Go ahead and don't hold that with importance, but I will.
Yeah. And thank God, I suppose, that there are people that are sort of holding it together. But that's the other funny thing about thinking that you're doing the right thing. It's always with this feeling of like, I am making sure the world runs well. And that's kind of interesting. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's this idea of intent versus impact. And there's this story that my teacher taught me a few years ago where if it's like pouring rain outside and you're an Uber driver, I call you up and I need a ride. You come driving down like H Street, where the puddles are all crazy on the side, and you pull up as close as you can to the curb because you don't want me to have to step in the puddle. You're trying to be kind. You don't want me to have to step in the puddle to get in the car. But you jump the curb. And I'm standing right there, so you take my foot with the curb. When I get in the car, you apologize profusely. But my foot is still broken. Your intent was never to break my foot. It was to do a nice thing. But that doesn't excuse the fact that my foot's still broken. So I can either choose to accept your apology and move on, or I can choose to be like, Randall's the worst person in the world because he broke my foot. And he said that he was trying to be nice. And I think that a lot of people just look at the impact and never consider the intent. So they're so easy to jump on like, he hurt me. Not, what was he trying to do in that moment? Was he trying to hurt you? Was it deliberate? And I think that it goes hand in hand with people choosing to be offended. Like, was that person really trying to offend you? Or were they trying to do what they thought was right?
I think everybody's just trying to make their way through this thing. And some people have tools and gifts, and some people, well, everyone has tools and gifts, but some of those tools, and it's like in a video game where you like drop one tool to pick up another one, like that's more valuable.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that gun or whatever. And one thing that really makes me upset about life is that it seems that those tools and gifts are either unevenly distributed, or that opportunities for the diversity of people's differences and gifts are not there, so that some people feel like they don't have anything. And the only reason I say that is because you're so optimistic and you're so positive. And one of the things that's kept me from being that way is these certain thoughts about, okay, yes, it's good to be kind. It's good. It's easier. It feels better. It's awesome. But then there's this other stuff that's going on, because the world has like a linear thing happening. Like whether you think it is or not, there's like years and there's decades and there's patterns and there's organizations, and those things get stronger too. So how do you stay with that worldview in spite of all? Because we were talking about how people are losing their minds and they're arguing online, and how do you stay so damn positive? Did I already ask you that? Am I asking it again? Maybe I just need it to be restated.
Maybe I can come up with a better answer. I think it's okay to be selfish with the right motivation.
Yes, I agree with you. Because people used to always come up to me and say, it really confused me. People used to say, it's when I first started Certain Sparks and people started hearing about it more, people would say things like, it's great what you do for the community. And I remember just thinking, what? Like, I just thought that was so weird. I thought it was like this big misunderstanding. Like, I would be like, what do they mean?
Yeah.
Because I was just doing a job. I needed a job. All I knew how to do was do a little bit of music stuff. So that's what I did. And then over time, I realized that it was seen as a positive, even though I was basically basing my actions for selfish motivation. Like, I just wanted to I didn't want to have a normal job. That was it. That was the extent of it, to be honest. I just knew that I could never work at the Holiday Inn Express ever again. Because I worked there and I thought, this is how people go crazy.
Yeah. I think that if you're selfish with the right motivation, it's not seen as selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
It's seen as doing good more often than not. And there are times where you have to be selfish to protect yourself, and that's okay. And sometimes I'm not so great at that, and I'll let people walk over me. But like I said earlier, am better as the years go on at understanding people and just reading people. And sometimes I don't even need to have a conversation with you, but I can, pick up on what's going on in a sense. And maybe you need to lash out at me because something is going on in your life.
You are incredible. Because you really are that way. And what you said about going and refilling your cup from someone else is pretty genius. Because that's the reality. You only have so much to offer and you run out. But the universe is infinite. You can get it somewhere else. That's the big thought so far for me. That's pretty big.
But you have to think about why, and you don't always know why somebody is acting the way they're acting, but maybe you're having a really bad day and you take it out on me. That has nothing to do with me. Like, it has nothing to do with how you feel about me. You're just having a bad day. Now, if I don't know you're having a bad day and you lash out at me, I'm going to be like, wow, he was really rude. I don't really want to talk to him anymore. But if I see, like, something had happened, or maybe later you're able to talk about it, I can realize like that wasn't me, that was him. So I think rationalizing situations will take you very far.
Very wise, Sierra. Very wise. What's a time where you maybe failed at that, or you thought you were not able to live with to practice what you believe? Because you're pretty consistent. Which is really, to me, like one of the, it's a really great quality. For myself, because of my polarity, I could go and feel like a completely different way. And now I'm realizing that there's something in the middle that makes me feel more consistently pleased. So I'm going to stick with that instead of letting myself go to these extremes. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But has there been a time where you were like, I really blew it?
I think it fell apart in the end in the situation. But when I was living in Washington, I had this friend who was super inconsistent. And, it had nothing to do with me, but she was just struggling. And instead of looking at it as she's struggling, I was like, she's terrible. I want nothing to do with her. And I also got my friends to realize that she's terrible. And I don't think she's a bad person. Maybe she was bad to me a few times, but it never had anything to do with me. And that's super minor, but for the most part, I honestly can't come up with a time that...
No, that's amazing. That's what I would have expected you to say, but even what you said makes sense. It's funny how I used to do that a lot. It was either like you were with me or you were my enemy. Mm-hmm. And it was just like always these wars. But it was also because I had a lot of mental energy I needed to burn off. So having somebody I hated was just like, great, that just helped. And then I started to realize, wow, there's just a bunch of people who I don't like, and maybe they don't like me either, and that's not a good place to be. So I resonate with the idea of you saying, trying to get your friends to, this is a bad person. Like the official verdict is in. Now there are bad people who maybe they just can't get out of their bad decision making, or they can't find their happiness or whatever. So that is true, or like a sociopath, or like you have to warn people.
Yeah.
But largely, it's really just opinion versus opinion of like who screwed up or who's wrong.
And more often than not, you can usually communicate your way out of it. But that's a whole nother set of skills that some people just do not have. But I think too, my dad always says, if I talk poorly about somebody, which doesn't happen very often, he's always like, you must really not like this person, because you don't say anything bad about anybody. Mm-hmm. And I try not to, even when somebody has wronged me, or maybe I've seen them do something that I was like, I don't really like your actions. I've tried to just say, okay, well then you don't have to be a part of my life. Not, I'm going to be terrible to you because you're terrible to me. Because then I just feel bad.
That's enough of a motivation, really. That's what always gets me, too, we were talking a little bit about addiction. But, like, one thing that I guess that's why it's a disease, But, like, essentially what I was going to say was that it seems like it doesn't work for people. And that at the same time, they can't. Like, the fact that it doesn't work for them is never enough. It's so interesting.
Yeah, like, you think, like, oh, this person, they have to be hitting rock bottom right now. And then they just keep doing it. And you're like, dude, that's not working. Why are you still doing that?
They lack it's weird because we were talking about how addiction is like this selfishness thing. But yet the important aspect of selfishness, which is like self-preservation and really taking care of yourself, they lack. It's a weird selfishness.
Yeah, it's selfishness that doesn't even benefit them.
Yeah, totally.
So what's the point of being selfish?
Totally. It's weird.
I mean, you're not benefiting other people either, but it's mutually unbeneficial. But if they don't help themselves then there's no help for them.
Yeah. I was just watching something about that. I don't remember what I was watching. Maybe it was The Sopranos. Anyway, let's talk about something else.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to talk about? Got anything of interest happening?
No. I mean, I don't do much.
What was the big lesson of COVID?
Oh, man.
I'm not saying there is one. I'm actually
I mean,
kidding.
everybody's, whether you attribute it to COVID or you attribute it to other people's lack of social existence, basically, there's something bigger that came out of this year than the fact that it was bad, right? For most people. For most people, it was terrible. Like, the last year sucked. But there are some people that, like, 2020 was honestly not a bad year for me. I had been doing poorly in school, and then I did really well in school, and I got all my grades back up. I joined the tech team at church. I joined the worship team at church. I got more involved. I made new friends somehow when I'm literally sitting in my house, not going anywhere.
Only you.
And I think that it might just be my optimism too. Like, I don't want to think about how bad COVID was and how I had to sit at home forever and never got to go see the people I wanted to see, and people were dying around me, and I wanted to look at the good things because otherwise it's just miserable. So I guess that could be the bigger picture, is not dwelling on all the bad, which we've already talked about.
Mm-hmm. You know what's funny? It was like, it seemed like everybody was talking about, like, what about the kids? What about the kids, their school years being stripped from them? And I'm sure that there's definitely, I felt for the families who I knew had nothing at home for the kids to be staying home with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, school was the highlight of their life, and they might not have anybody to talk to them, and, you know, people have really rough lives. But what I thought was funny was how a lot of parents were sort of talking about the children. What about the kids? It's so hard for them. And I'm like, kids are really adaptable. Like,
and they're very resilient.
Like, when I was asking kids, how are you doing? Most of the time they're like, it's fine. I mean, it's weird, but it's fine. I didn't really see anybody going, this is just unbearable.
Yeah.
And I thought that was funny because it was like the parents were projecting on the kids. But the parents were the ones going,
exactly,
this is weird and all these changes. But the kids were like, yeah, we just roll with it. We're 7. We're 8. You know, like, it's okay.
There's definitely something to say about, like, personality differences too. Like, there are some kids that they crave that social time, and they only get it at school. And so, yeah, they do struggle when they have to stay at home and do Zoom school and all of that. I know I have. But there's also some kids that it's like, I like this. I don't have to go see people. Like, why would I go see people? So you kind of have two ends of the spectrum. But I think that for the most part, as long as you didn't have COVID or you were not affected by, like, a family member dying by COVID, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, it was funny. What got me through it was Sean Cosby.
Love that guy.
Sean, we had I felt guilty for how good of a summer we had 2020. Not really, but I mean, I was aware. What do you see? But I was aware that, like, we were doing okay. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to make it. But we were, like, living the high life. But I remember early on in COVID, he messaged me. We were, like, still in full-on lockdown, like the first, because we shut down Sparks, like, before anybody else did, because I was just like, this is weird. I don't know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it in the history books. Yes, there's the Spanish flu. It's a long time ago. It's a different society. I don't know what this is. So let's play our part. We have a lot of kids. We have a lot of families. Grandparents drop the kids off. Let's take out our little network
mm-hmm.
from this problem. And then, like, I don't know, a month in, second month, one day, maybe it was the first month, but Sean called me. He's like, I'm on the way to the beach. Are you in? And I'm like, you know, we were all in our separate lockdowns, and I'm like, yes, I'm in. Kim picked me up when we went out to the beach, had the best day ever. Everybody at the beach was happy. And I was like, there are these two realities going on. There's people who find a way and get through, because we always have as humans.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that there's ups and there's downs and there's seasons to life. And then there's people who've been online for too long and they have no idea how the world works. And all they do is let the TV tell them what's happening. And I could clearly see that the people at the beach were totally fine. And I was like, I want to be the beach people.
Mm-hmm. I think that...
And then I just had to be sensitive because it was real and we did have a school and people could get sick. So I was like, okay, where's the balance of not being afraid and being safe enough to not be responsible for... I didn't want to be the place where they went, 27 people were infected, you know?
Exactly.
One child died while holding his guitar. I was like, please, just don't let that be me.
I think that there are people who just are like the beach people in general in life. They're like, there's a really bad thing going on. What can we do to make ourselves feel better, make other people feel better, and to get through this? Like you said, life is going to go up and down, and you kind of just have to, like, ride the waves, right? Or there's the people that are going to wallow in the fact that they're sitting at home depressed because they haven't left their house in 3 months.
It was so funny hearing people like, when will this end? I'm like, you know, you can go outside. You know that you can do a lot of things. And the things that you can do are the things you should do, not just during COVID, but in your life in general. You need to be taking a walk. You need to be getting some fresh air. That's what's going to keep you from having those other pre-existing conditions.
Exactly.
The idea of health without the outdoors is just like,
doesn't really
something's
exist.
missing.
And, you know, life is more than, oh man, I don't get to go to Walmart. Like, what in Lompoc is there to do?
Anyways.
Like, you cannot tell me that you do everything in Lompoc. There are other places to go, like the beach. You don't have to stay at home. And I think a lot of people were uncertain and they were scared and they didn't know what was going on. And there was a lot of fear mongering in the news. But at the same time, it's like, you're kind of wallowing in it and you're choosing.
We're kind of talking about
to believe
what we were talking about earlier, and it just kind of got it. That feeling about either deciding or not that you're going to make the best of it. The whole nation got sucked into an epic game of that on one issue.
Mm-hmm. But it applies to everything in life.
I think you've got the holy grail there. Question for you: if you were in charge of COVID,
in charge of
you're not the
making
bacteria.
COVID exist.
You're not the virus itself.
Okay.
You weren't at the lab. You're in charge of helping get the word out and whatever. I'm not even going to say what you're in charge of. You're in charge of COVID. What's one or two things you would have done differently compared to what happened?
I don't know specifically how I would have done it, but I would have tried to, in the best of my abilities, to not create so much fear that was not really relevant to what was going on. I think that a lot of the news sources and things were, again, like we've been talking about this whole time, choosing to only tell us the bad and not tell us anything good. And not that COVID is great, but not everything about it is bad either.
You know what's crazy? The way I heard about COVID was, people were talking about it, for, I don't know, a couple months before that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it's going to be bad. I remember being at a friend's dinner table and he was making a joke about, Corona beer and Corona, that all that stuff was just like starting. And I thought it was so funny.
And at that time it was like, ha!
And then at some point I go, I got to look into this because I like to know stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I start looking into it and I start reading these New York Times articles. And I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then every day I would check that fucking New York Times, same webpage, which they would update.
Mm-hmm.
And there'd be another thing of
filling up freezer trucks and...
and it just kept going. And I started disseminating information. I started telling people I loved and care. you got to be ready for this. Now, it was true to a certain degree. There was a certain level of preparation. We didn't know what was going to happen. But once I got, and I don't even go on those websites. I don't even read. I don't get into any of that. I know what's going on in the world because I'm just, like you, I pick up the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
But I said to myself, I'm never going to that New York Times website ever again for the rest of my life. Every time I see an article, I'm like, never again, New York Times. Because all you did was just freak me out.
And I think the climate at which we were already in was not ready for what happened. And I think that a lot of people chose to obsess over those things, like going to the New York Times website. Like, I know people that every day they knew exactly what was happening and where it was happening, and I was like,
it became,
why?
We're in this thing right now where, like, identity is rolled up on having the information. Now, they believe that they did the research and that they have somehow pulled up some stuff that no one else knows. And that's how people go around. Well, do you know about this? Do you know about that? I've got the data. And it's like, you're not the scientist. And there's so many factors. It's a confluence of forces. Everyone believing that science can cure everything, that science is the great holy grail, when they don't realize that science has been completely bought off many years ago by corporate interests. People know those things, but they can't reconcile them. They know that things are for sale. They know that anything can be bought. But it's too hard to believe, but not our beloved scientists. Not our... Everyone always believes that whatever they're into, but not pro sports. They would never sell that. It's like everything's for sale. Mm-hmm. This ties into why I'm so negative. Because I'm negative about that big fucking picture. Like, those things freak me out. I know that the world has been bought and sold a long time ago. And all you can do is figure out how you're going to play the game. You can play it by being positive. But, the assets of the world are owned by other people. And that includes the media. That includes health.
And whoever owns it gets to choose what
popular opinion is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so people come up to you and they tell you what they saw on TV or on the computer or whatever. And we were talking about this in the car, but I just want to be like, you're just telling me what someone else spent a lot of money to get you to believe, and now you're working for them for free. That's what I want to say to people. You are working for them for free.
Like, your crazy aunt on Facebook, they're like, no, my aunt told me. And I'm like, no, your aunt got it from where?
Yes.
Or, I saw a friend post this article, and I'm like, okay, where was the article from?
Like, why do you think they're putting millions of dollars to build that website, to have it look that good, just to tell you the truth?
So you'll look at it, and then you'll believe whatever's on the page, because we have, in some messed up way, trained ourselves to just believe the first thing we see. We're like, oh, this website looks, credible. Let's believe it.
There's this idea of a astroturf movement. A grassroots movement is, an astroturf movement is it looks like a grassroots movement, but it's just a product of the industry. So, fracking was one of those things. And a lot of the old system, whether that's oil or, all the big pharma, big ag, all of those things, they don't want to go away. And they're like,
absolutely not. Okay,
let's hire these lobbyists. How can we change people's views? And you can have people walk up to you and tell you something. And I'm like, it's on their website. It's a talking point. You're just telling me what they told you.
Just
to think.
Regurgitate. Yeah. You're just parroting.
And that's what I mean.
The
Unless you did the research, unless you're going to tell me something that you found out, which most of the time the people that find out the valuable information, no one will listen to them. That's how I know that what you're telling me is probably not the truth, because the truth doesn't usually get spread that far. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I took a class last quarter. My professor called it Climate Change 101. It was actually an English class. But we literally, what you were just talking about, we talked about. Like, why are all these big industries so believable? Why does, Big Pharma get to put out this statement saying XYZ, and then, this website, maybe it be, some type of news site covers it, and then somebody posts it on Facebook, and then thousands of people later, this person finds out about it, and it's like a big game of telephone.
And it's not an accident.
It's what they want you to do.
It is, when we were talking about, do you really think that these things are conspiracies? I don't know which ones are and which ones aren't, but I know that that's just the way any industry would work. I mean, if you like being kind and you had enough money to start a kind campaign that would teach kids about being kind, and you had an unlimited budget, you'd go after it. Mm-hmm. And if you had to maybe be a little sneaky to ultimately get people to be kind, you might even do that because you know that it's ultimately for the good, or what you believe is good. And that's the same way these organizations work. And the structures of power are so big and so unwilling to die that they will do anything. And that's where you get into the, well, do you think they would do this or that? It's like, I absolutely know that they would. I just don't know which one of these stories to believe which way. And that's where you check out and you go, well, I can only do what I can do, which is good. But my big thing, what really upsets me is, well, we all check out, those structures continue and they just get stronger. And now it's like true mind control operations through your phone, which sounded like such a good idea. But now it's constantly telling you whatever it wants to tell you, or even just what you want to hear. That's the real genius of it, which people are talking about finally with like the social network and all that stuff, that you're just in an echo chamber.
Yeah. But
that's the truly scary stuff, because it's like, okay, well, and why are they doing that? Because this is the last power grab of a world that there's, they now know, even they know, okay, we're running out of resources or
I took a class when I was up in Washington. It was, again, another English class, and it was just on dystopian societies. And we linked the world that we live in right now to dystopian societies. And it was one of the most interesting yet terrifying things to do. Yes. Because we watched episodes of like Black Mirror and things that people sit on their couch and watch, and it's like, this is entertainment. And I'm like, look around you. This is happening right now.
Yes.
It looks so far-fetched to you, but it's really not.
There's a movie that I love called Masked and Anonymous. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's written by Bob Dylan, but he doesn't credit himself. So
man, Bob Dylan.
Our guy. And he's in it. And the dialogue is just Bob Dylan-isms for 2 hours or whatever, however long the movie is. Every line that comes out of somebody's mouth is genius. You have to watch it at least 3 times to even begin to get the movie, but you can watch it 1,000 times because there's just so much content.
Yeah, you'll always catch something different.
But that movie is basically about, a society where, the good are locked up and they're released every once in a while to be a mouthpiece for this corrupt society because they need you. And so, do you want to stay in jail or do you want to come out and work for us? And of course you're like, well,
I don't want to be in jail.
I play the guitar, so what do you want me to do? And so Bob has to do this benefit concert. And his character's name's Jack Fate. But anyways, it's what's interesting about that movie is I've watched it since, I don't know, at least maybe 15 years ago. I mean, maybe the first time I saw it. And the first time I saw it, I just was getting into Bob Dylan, so I liked that. And then I'm like, I think this movie has some real wisdom to it. And it's these little nuggets in there. But that movie looked like some futuristic nightmare. And now it looks exactly, that's so where we are. And I'm just like, oh my God. I learned more, not joking, Cierra, I learned more from that movie than from ever going to school or any other source. Because the whole premise of the movie was, how do you go through a corrupt world? What's the stance you should take? And in the end, Bob Dylan's character is a hero because he doesn't get involved. And of course you think, well, how could you not get involved when there's so much... He's like, you'll see. By the end of that movie, you're like, just don't take the bait. You live for what you live for and don't take their bait, It's like you said with your roommate or whatever, that you knew that maybe she was having a hard time, but you couldn't help but take the bait. And right now I feel like everyone's trying to get you to take the bait and catch you in the trap, Start arguing with your parents about whatever issue. Argue at the dinner table with everybody you know. And it's like, that's where they want it at, because then it's like, go back online, then go back in your room, go online, spend more time online.
It's like COVID. You've literally infected all the people that you're with.
Yes.
the whole like media network is a virus in itself. Like, it's just to scam people.
My favorite thing to do is go back and watch old commercials and old shows, and because the culture changes so fast that even if you watch something from 5 years ago, it seems extremely dated, because commercials are always trying to sell you the idea that you're slightly out of date. You need a software update. You need to buy this. You need to have this
You
car.
need the newest phone.
Yeah, and it's never ending. But if you go back, you can see, oh my God, even the news, like everything that you thought when you were there was just an authentic experience. You can see how much you're just being corralled into a worldview.
It's interesting to think about
Fashion too. And
that way. What is the world we're in right now? Like 2020, 2021. What is this going to look like next year or in 5 years? There's so many different repercussions that we don't even know about yet. Like, we haven't fully gone back into society. But in the ways that I have, I've already seen it. Like, people don't even know how to talk to each other.
yeah.
What is that going to look like in 5 years? Is everybody going to be in a little cubicle and on their computer? And that's the only way that we're going to see each other is on the computer?
Well, one thing that my COVID thing was that the lesson of COVID was that life finds a way, you know, like, oh my God, there's not going to be enough toilet paper. There's not going to be enough food. There's not going to be enough this. There's not going to be enough that. And yet there is.
That feels like so long ago. It's crazy.
It was really funny, wasn't it?
I
It was a
remember
mass
the very
hysteria.
beginning when people were buying all the toilet paper and all the posts on Facebook and everybody making jokes about it, and I was like, do you even need toilet paper? Like, yeah, it'd be nice if you had it.
Yeah, maybe
but
that's
do you-
why there's a problem, because you're spreading this fear. And
It's-
there's only a limited amount of trucks delivering toilet paper. It's not that all hell broke loose. It's just that there's normal amount of toilet paper to buy, and they didn't anticipate that everyone was going to say toilet paper every day for 24 hours on Facebook, and that would affect the market. It's as simple as that.
Well, and down to the simplest idea, like, why was it toilet paper? Why were you freaking out about toilet paper? Use a rag and wash it.
I'm not using a rag and washing it, Sierra. I'm not. That's where I draw the line.
Like, you know, that's the shit. When you
That's
hear...
literally the shit.
Like, that's what's happening all around us, where one person is saying something so dumb, like, everybody go get the toilet paper because the world is ending and we need toilet paper. And it's like, that's the last thing you need right now. Because now, I mean...
Well, that's what when we said how when there's a complex world, it's so much easier to find a specific thing. Okay, what are we going to do about COVID? I do not know. I literally have no idea. I'm not a scientist. But I know toilet paper. I know what it looks like. I know where it is. And that's how that works. It's like things just get so out of our control that we just hone in on some stupid thing. And it's totally arbitrary. It's like you could pick it out of a hat. And, you know, remember in 2020, everyone's like, what will it be next? What will be the next, you know, meme of our culture? There was so many little things that came and went.
Oh, of course.
And it's just like, yeah, they're all random. And yet the basic needs that we know, there are children who are not loved and that there is not enough, you know, there's like these fundamental things that we never get around to doing. This is why I'm pissed off, by the way, Sierra. Because everyone's so high and mighty about what they're going to do for the world. And this is what got me during the political thing. Either side. Everyone was like a revolutionary or a patriot. They saw themselves as some historical figure. They're literally hitting fucking share. Mm-hmm. That's their boop.
Like, that's gonna do
my
the-
job for this country is done. And I'm like, you're all so amazing, and yet there are things that need to be done in your community, and you just turn a blind eye. In fact, in every family, there's things that need to be done that no one's getting
Absolutely.
around to. And everyone's saying, you know, we need to come together as one on whatever subject. I'm like, well, everyone has someone in their family they don't talk to, myself included. And I thought, it's funny how we're always saying we're going to fix this, we're going to fix that. It's so hard to fix the things in our own life. That's why we talk about toilet paper.
because we're having some avoidance behaviors.
Bad.
Avoidance behaviors. And if you think about it that way, like, you don't necessarily have to be doing big work in the world. Like, I think people get hung up on the fact that, like, the country, the world is so big, and I'll leave that for somebody else to do. And it's like, you don't need to do something so big scale. Like, bring it down a little
Do what's
bit.
in front of you. I remember Julie Viola used to always say,
I love that woman with all my heart.
I love Julie. God, talk about an important person. I mean, Julie, when I was my most insane, and I mean insane, to be able to go to work at Southside and talk about my crazy thoughts, and she'd be like, yes. And she never was like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is a coffee shop. Get it together. I would just be in a manic, and seeing how she ran her shop and the way people were welcomed in there and the way people were made to feel like, no, there's a space for you here too. I mean, and so to the point where even people would be like, what's going on here? How come you let that person in the shop? You know how many people have said that to Julie? You've got, like, why is this person?
Why not?
We've got to get rid of this person. Like, this is getting too weird. And she'd be like, everybody fits in here. Mm-hmm. And boy, but what she said was, I think it's an AA thing, do the next right thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of those isms from
Maybe.
do the next right thing. It was so simple. As far as you were saying, like,
And it's-
everyone wants to do some big thing. Just do the next right thing. It's right in front of you. Like, I need to mow this grass again, even though I just did it. But instead I'm sitting here talking about the universe.
And it's kind of funny to think about, because I know for myself, I very easily look at my bubble. I have my people in my bubble. I have my things that I do. But at the same time, I find myself being so concerned about all of these big worldly things. And it's like, but why don't I pay attention to my bubble? Why am I going outside of my bubble when there's things that need to be done inside of it? So at the same time, I have a very small mindset, but big mindset. And nobody knows how to balance the two.
Mm-hmm. I used to spend too much time thinking about things I had no control over, like all the things I was just talking about, because it let me avoid my own actual problems. And only now am I even able to express that, and then only through that can you confront them. And they're not even big problems. That's what's really embarrassing, was that I lost 20 years of my life just thinking about the dumbest things. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had to. I had to go that way to get to the point where I'm starting to be, I feel like a normal, somewhat healthy human being instead of I don't know what. But it makes me think, God, I wish I could have just started earlier or been told some of these things. And that's why I'm talking about them. I don't think that there's really anything we're saying that's new or revolutionary. But ideas, it's like, it's just a seed, and it finds where it can grow, And yeah, here, sometimes when your plants keep dying in your house, it's not about what you need to do with the plant. You just need to move it. It's in the wrong room. Mm-hmm. And you move it, and it's like, oh my God, plant's totally happy. And I'm doing the same thing I was doing before. Sort of like that with ideas and worldviews. It's like, you can think that you're just so alone, and you're just like literally in the wrong room. Just move to another room. Find one person you like. Tell them the truth.
You can do that with ideas too. Like, maybe you have an idea about something that needs to be fixed in our country. It's like, okay, well, how can that same thing be fixed in our state? How can that same thing be fixed in the county or the city?
Scalability,
in your friend group? Because a lot of time, while there are systems at play in our country, the same type of issues are happening right where you're sitting. And instead of only thinking about them in a big way, think about them in a small way. It doesn't make them less significant. It usually makes them more relevant.
Totally. Because you literally can't affect those things, but you can affect this. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to get lost in that. And that's what I think the whole thing that's happening now is that people are being told that they're playing a role in these giant things, you know? Like there was a whole thing of Trump's not going to leave the White House and he's got a whole nother plan and only you know about it. Don't tell anyone else. We're going to save the country. And that was so appealing to people.
Mm-hmm.
And when it didn't happen, they didn't even address it. People were just like, next thing. That's what's so crazy about people, is that we're not able to like even go, okay, that didn't work, let's try something different. We just go, another distraction, please. And they're like, we got plenty of those, roll them in.
And it's the same avoidance behaviors.
And that's why ultimately I had to forgive other people, because I realized that I was just doing the same stupid shit. Like I was no smarter than anybody else, no matter what I thought, what I knew, what I'd read, what I'd seen, how many documentaries I'd watched. I was like, people don't even know this basic stuff. And I'm like, how could they? It's hard enough just to get up every day. People have got their own problems.
Well, it's like the difference between, you're looking at two people and you have one that has, like their PhD, but there's one that has like their lifetime worth of experience in that same subject. Why is the one that has the PhD more important than the one that has all the experience in the subject?
Or how about this? Here's something we love in our culture that's really bizarre. If a rich guy gives all of his stuff away and rides his bike across country and grows a big beard and just says, I'm just going to do what I love to do, everyone's like, what an amazing man. Now, if you didn't have everything and you just rode your bike across country and grew a big beard, they'd be like, what a loser.
Yeah, like, why are you choosing to do that with your time?
Isn't that funny? But you see that all the time. People go, he gave it all away. What a saint. And you're like, well,
I
people
had nothing
have
to begin with.
And they make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I think are the true heroes. And that's why I get so upset about like the narrative of how hard it is. Now, don't get me wrong. Every job is difficult. And police officers clearly have a tough job.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see a cop as any more of a hero than the lady who makes coffee at the donut shop every morning. We all have a role to play. You knew what the job was. You signed up for it.
Uh-huh.
All that comes with it. You didn't know that people don't like cops. People are going, oh my God, there's so much hatred towards police right now. And it's like,
There's so much hatred towards everybody.
Yeah, there's nobody really safe right now. That's why everyone's like during COVID, do you remember the thing of you couldn't say if you were somewhere, you didn't want to post it because someone would, what a weird world.
And
that's the
it's
dystopian
always gonna
thing.
it's always going to be that way. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like a certain group of people or just one person in general for whatever reason they deem fit. And either people are going to choose to jump on that bandwagon and also not like that group of people, or they're going to say, that doesn't really matter to me. I see them the same as I see everybody else. And people are so easily caught up in bandwagons. Not saying that bad things don't happen. Like, the situation with the police has been terrible in the last year. But also, a lot of other things have been terrible too.
Yes.
It's what the media decides to put out there. Which goes back to what we were already talking about. Just one big network.
So how are we going to tear down the media, Sarah? Okay, we've got all these smarts. You're the people person. I've got my twisted ideas. I want you. This is why I brought you here.
I'll
today.
go win the people over. I'll go win the people over, and then
I run in and tell them the truth.
Yep.
I'm just kidding. I don't know if I have anything else I wanted to say. I think we've had a great conversation. I don't think we solved anything, but I'll tell you one thing. It's literally always great to see you. You're one of those people. What a blessing you have.
Thank you.
And I can't think of a time when I saw you when I didn't think, hell yeah, Sierra's here. Even if we didn't talk, if I just saw you on the other side of the room, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah, like when I was driving down the street and I waved and you didn't even know it was me until I had passed.
And then I had a big smile on my face and I was like, Sierra's here. Yes, life will be okay. We survived. And I know that not everybody survived COVID, and I'm not trying to make light of it, so do not cancel me. But
I got your back. I won't let them cancel you.
Thank you. But it was great to see you, and let's get together again. It's been a year since I've seen you.
Yeah. Well, whenever we went to the Bob Dylan concert, that was like the last time we hung out.
That's got to change.
I'm sure it will.
Well, we'll look out for the next Bob Dylan show. And Batty Caddy, do you have anything you want to add? Okay, buddy. That concludes the show.
Shadows are falling, and I've been all day. It's too hot to sleep, and time is running away. Feel like my soul has turned into steel. I've still got the scars that the sun didn't heal. Not even room enough to be anywhere. But it's not dark yet, but it's getting there. My sense of humanity has gone down the drain. Every beautiful thing, there's been some kind of pain. She wrote me a letter, and she wrote it so kind. She put down in writing what was in her mind. I don't see why I should even care. It's not dark yet, but it's getting there. I've been to London, I've been to Gay Paris, I followed the river, and I got to the sea. I've been down on the bottom of a world full of lies. I ain't looking for nothing in anyone's eyes. Sometimes my burden is more than I can bear. It's not dark yet, but it's getting there. I was born here and I'll die here, against my will. I know it looks like I'm moving, but I'm standing still. Every nerve in my body, so they can be numb. I can't even remember what it was I came here to get away from. Don't even hear a murmur of a prayer. Well, it's not dark yet, but it's getting there.